Well, good morning. On behalf of Doug and myself, I'm Dan Malin. I'm the Senior Vice President of Broker Relations at Payer Compass, and we are really excited to be part of the Health Rosetta event. Doug and I have gotten to know each other over the last several years, and I'm excited to be able to share the platform with Doug today. And what we want to talk about is reference-based pricing. And obviously, as most of us know, reference-based pricing comes with some friction, and people are concerned about friction. And I've been working with Doug for the last several years, but the process that Health to Business has gone through really kind of limits the friction, and we've kind of created a partnership between Health to Business and Payer Compass, and we're going to talk about that today. But Doug, you want to say a few words just to kind of start out what we're going to chat about here today?
Yeah, appreciate it, Dan. So Doug Hetherington, CEO and founder of Health to Business, kind of been really an advisor for about the last 20 years. And it was probably about a decade ago when I started very aggressively shifting towards unbundled self-funding and cost containment type solutions. And it's been a really interesting journey along the way as I've worked with, different types of solutions and strategies, different vendors, and the experiences that we've had. And I think what makes our organization and kind of, maybe even my approach a little bit unique is that we believe providers are the solution. And so certainly when we look at our solutions, our strategies, we always take the provider into mind and consider how that, how that's going to impact them in the care continuum from a financial standpoint. So we really tend to look at things holistically, recognizing that the provider is a critical component of healthcare, obviously.
Great. So Doug, I want to ask you a question and have you discuss this a little bit. There's been a lot of changes in the healthcare landscape in the last couple of years, and obviously COVID's had a huge impact. People are a lot more, how do I want to say this? They're a lot more aware of things going on in the healthcare space. You have basically selected your vendors to help you with the process. Talk a little bit about, how what's going on currently in the landscape has helped you select your RBP vendor here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think when I observe a lot of others out there, trying to evaluate what may be the best vendor or best strategy, for their employer or, whatever that might be, I think everybody tends to look at it through just a couple of lenses, savings and noise. And it's kind of like, all right, who can maximize savings? Maybe who has the lower fees, who has the best defense, and then how does that kind of translate into the overall noise and the experience of both the plan and the plan member. And yet, if you think about it, very seldom do we actually take into consideration the provider. We really don't tend to look at it through that lens. And so as we've done that over the years, that's the way that we tend to look at it, is a recognition that when you're in essence stepping away from the PPO world, you're cutting the cord. So if you can think about a PPO as almost creating a digital type transaction, just like using our cell phones and smartphones, when we apply reference-based pricing and in essence remove that logo, it's amazing how all of a sudden we've now transformed this into an analog process. And so I think that there are many assumptions that in particular we make as advisors, even the reference-based pricing industry, I believe, as to why we have friction, whether that's based on financial concerns or even other concerns around, plan payment reimbursement or the interactions with that member. And so we take that into consideration. We believe that's critically important because at the end of the day, if you think about most of the noise that is stemming from reference-based pricing, right, it really starts after the service. Primarily, it is either right at the point of service or immediately after, upwards of a form of a balance bill. And that noise is being generated by the provider. And yet we really don't address that in many of the models that exist in the industry today. So we believe that in our programs where we're working side by side with providers and in essence have a seat at the table, we also believe it's critically important that we invite our reference-based pricing partners to the table as well. It's important that they understand how one another work and how we meet the needs of each other so that ultimately we can create a fantastic experience for the plan, the member, and the provider. Because once you've kind of nailed it for all three of those stakeholders, ultimately, it's a lot easier for me as the advisor. And as we know, if the advisor is happy, the TPA is happy, the repricers are happy, and pretty much everybody's happy at that point.
Well, right. It's a win-win-win situation for all parties. And what's interesting about what Doug is doing is Doug is making it a win for the provider. And he basically has gone in and represented to the provider that there is a way for them to win. Doug, talk a little bit about how the integration of Payer Compass and Innovate 360 kind of supplements what you're doing in the direct contract space, and how we kind of collaborate in the total needs of a particular member group and their members, so that what you do and what we do kind of becomes a seamless process that allows the member to have a good experience, and a much better experience because of less friction.
Sure. Yeah, I think when you look at how a reference-based pricer, maybe their model, or even how they approach the market space, again, I think you have to look at what's the formula for reimbursement, what's that methodology, and then how sound is that process. That is certainly something that I think is critically important in this. And the reason that is that Medicare is not linear. I hear so many people talk in the relation of, well, are you paying 140 or 150, as if that really represents an accurate barometer of what a reasonable reimbursement is. And the reality is that one, Medicare is not linear across the country. So you'll see that what is paid in one side of the country may be a very different dollar amount on the other side of the country. But then when you look at two different types of providers, even within a given region, how they are reimbursed can vary as well. And so when you begin to look at that, you begin to recognize the ability to sit down and articulately have a discussion with the provider around what is a reasonable reimbursement, and do we actually agree to what that actually means. We run into this so often, where what we think is 150% is not necessarily 150% according to the provider. And so things are lost in translation. And that's where we have found the Payer Compass model to be so beneficial. First and foremost is that the integrity of the data is really second to none across the industry. And so we think that that's critically important when you're able to speak with a provider and they recognize that literally Payer Compass is processing tens of millions of claims per year accurately against Medicare, applying all of the necessary edits. They appreciate that. The other side of it is to be able to report back to them, to substantiate those reimbursements and have documentation for that. That is also critically important, because you're now really building not only a trust based on working with one another and having aligned values, but now you're demonstrating it. You're executing it from an operational standpoint, which now begins to solidify their commitment to doing something not only sustainable, but also meaningful in their community. So those are really critical components. And then the last piece is hospitals care about their community members. They also care about their community members when they seek care outside of that community, or even outside of their physicians. And our provider partners want to know that these members are supported and that they are advocated for, and that ultimately any challenges that they run into are going to be resolved. And that is really the third piece that Payer Compass meets for us, that we believe is so critically important, not only to us, but our provider partners.
Great, Doug. Thank you. Let's talk about a specific client situation. I know we've got several things that we've done collaboratively. Let's talk about a specific client and kind of the integration of how the direct contract and the reference-based pricing kind of lends itself to go together. You and I had a meeting a couple days ago with a client, that was a school that's looking at reference-based pricing, and there's some very interesting conversations that take place when you actually meet in front of an employer. So why don't you address, kind of an example of what we do when we pull one of these together?
Yeah, I've actually got a couple. I'd say the first one is really specific to that school. They're like many employers. They've seen their healthcare costs skyrocket over the last several years, and actually shared with us that in the last 5 years, healthcare went from being number 12 on their line item to now number 3. And they are concerned that even at this next renewal, it is actually now going to move into the number 2 spot. And as they'll tell you, they have every belief that it is going to take over number one, which is compensation to those teachers. And so they're really in a desperate position. And as we began to work with them, we began to realize that they actually had some understanding of reimbursements, that they had expertise within their organization, as odd as that might seem, that they wanted to be fair to providers, even if it wasn't in their direct partnerships, that they could still do that in a non-direct way. And it was the ability for Payer Compass not only to be able to work directly with a provider and articulate their reimbursements, but to also then provide feedback to the employer and pathways to get to not only settlements, but how could we come to maybe some agreement as we would move forward, to where this employer felt comfortable engaging in specific types of settlements and reimbursement strategies that were maybe a little bit more sophisticated than other vendors or other employers for that matter. But ultimately that the Payer Compass Innovate 360 model gave them that level of flexibility. What we also love about it is that you can keep it simple. We have another employer right now that we're working with, just over 50, has never even learned about self-funding until this last year, and candidly is looking at us and saying, put the training wheels and do it for us. And it's so easy for us to just say, wonderful, well, we're going to default right back to our standard model, and this should work great for you. And here's the exact process by which we are going to now manage that strategy. So really, whether we need to go into something that is highly sophisticated, where a plan wants to actually provide direction as to what reimbursements may be within given providers or even certain parts of the country, or to a plan that says, I literally need somebody to hold my hand through this process so that I can get my employees better benefits, you're able to accommodate that in both of those areas. And we think that that really speaks to the flexibility you all provide. The last one I would share, and I think that this is very unique, and again, it's coming from the provider's lens. As we would go out and we work with providers, often the term reference-based pricing, the four-letter word, comes up. And you can see CFOs and VPs of revenue cycle get absolutely red in the face when you begin to discuss many of the vendors out there. What we have found very interesting is that when the name Payer Compass comes up, it is almost never associated with reference-based pricing. And in fact, most often they think of you as the Medicare folks. And that is because you reprice so many Medicare claims, even for some of the largest Blues, United, Cignas, and Aetnas out there, that they perceive you as having some of the highest integrity from a reimbursement standpoint because they see your name often. And we think that that has a big impact in the communication side of it, in that you've already demonstrated your ability to reimburse a claim against Medicare. So if you're only applying a percentage or applying some other methodology, in essence, that provider is often satisfied with the communication and explanation of that reimbursement. And that leads to lower occurrences of balanced bills, as well as lower noise for the member, which we believe then results in a better care continuum and better clinical outcomes. So just by way of you guys being good at what you do inherently, it has actually softened the experience for many of the stakeholders in a reference-based price plan.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that strong endorsement and those case studies. You know, we're here with Health Rosetta and their ecosystem, and just comment for a minute how this integrates with the ecosystem and the concepts that Health Rosetta is promoting, and where do you see this going, you know, into the future? Because I've been doing this for a very long time, and I was very excited earlier yesterday to talk to some young producers who are embracing this. Give some insight to these young producers about how do you take this ecosystem and form it around the client and around the client needs. Give us a little bit of an idea how to implement this and kind of the expected outcomes in terms of savings. I mean, what's realistic in terms of how you would deliver this in the marketplace?
Yeah. Maybe a couple of thoughts there on some directions. You know, first and foremost, there is a significant amount of shifting and changing going on within the industry right now. It's a very exciting time, but that also results in a lot of chaos. And I think that what you'll find as you begin to move across the spectrum of progressivism, you're going to have to think a little bit different way. You're going to have to start thinking outside of the box, and as I say, getting out of the rut. And what you will find is that the vendors you work with matter. the way that they operate their organizations, the model in which you're applying the strategy, it all matters at the end of the day. It's not just as simple as picking a product off of a spreadsheet. So you need to make sure that you are very well aligned. When you develop a strategy with an employer or even within a community health system like we look to develop, you want to make sure that all of those vendors are mission aligned. So make sure, one, that you have a great relationship with them, but two, that you truly understand their model and what the value proposition is to your plan. I think the other side of it that I would look at is to look within Health Rosetta. There are myself and many other advisors out there that have had quite a few years of experience, good and bad, and we're always willing to share it. I'm always so excited to get around Health Rosetta advisors because they're some of the most brightest, innovative folks that I've ever come across in the industry, and yet they're willing to share, constantly willing to share and collaborate. And I think it's a recognition for myself and many others that this is really challenging. At the end of the day, the savings is absolutely possible. I've had plans that have saved anywhere from 20 to even 50% in a year-over-year basis and have maintained those savings now on an ongoing basis, able to provide much better benefits to their employees and ultimately stabilize their plans and improve the overall experience. But you have to be prepared to truly go through that. It really is challenging. You need to be committed to it. But once you find your right vendor partners, you need to begin to then build a coalition around that. Allow your employers to work with one another, to collaborate with the vendors, and in essence, develop your own community-based health plan within your community. I think that's a great way to operate, to embolden one another and build strength. There is strength in numbers, and we are fighting a lot of resistance from the traditional way things have always been done. And so it's going to take all of us coming together. And so I love the way Health Rosetta brings together the best of the best in vendors like Payer Compass, as well as the best of the best of some of the brightest advisors across the country.
Very good. Well, thank you very much, Doug. We really appreciate the opportunity. If we have a minute or two to answer some questions, I'm not sure where we are on time. If we're out of time, or do we have a few minutes that we can answer a few questions?
What type of fee model do you all have, Dan?
So our fee model is a PEPM. You're per employee per month. We do not invade the stop loss proceeds, or we do not invade the employer's claim fund. We basically are flat per employee per month, and it's very flexible in terms around what we can do depending on the needs of the client. I mean, one of the things that's a hallmark of Payer Compass is flexibility. There's different ways to look at RBP, and we integrate with direct contracts extremely well. We also are willing to look at different options for different types of clients. And as Doug said, the strength of Payer Compass is really the engine that drives all the repricing, which is second to none. I've been in the business for on the reference-based pricing side for the last 8 or 9 years, and the pricing engine for Payer Compass is really the Ferrari of reference-based pricing in terms of the technology and in terms of the output. We reprice right to the penny. So appreciate the question. Are there any other questions that we can answer while we're here?
Does Payer Compass defend balance bills when they occur?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
The balance bill process, we have FIA group baked into our PEPM, so they come along with Payer Compass on all opportunities in all cases. The FIA group, obviously, most of the people in the audience here know who they are, but when a balance bill needs to be adjudicated, we assign a patient advocate. Patient advocate engaged with the member. We create a dashboard so everybody can see what's going on. And when it gets escalated, we escalate it to the FIA group. One of the things that you need to recognize, 98.5% of the time, there is no balance bill. So balance bills are only happening 1.5% of the time. And of those 1.5%, 40% of the time, we're able to through our patient advocate, get that written off. 40% of the time, there might be an adjustment in the price, and about 20% of the time, there is an escalation to the FIA group who then helps us resolve it. So when you look at 1,000
Hey, Dan,
claims,
we're getting the wrap up sign right here.
okay, all right, I can't see what's going on. So anyway, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to, you have our contact information for Doug and myself. Appreciate all your attentions, and we'll look forward to engaging with you in the future. Thank you very much on behalf of Doug and myself.